And it's like,
100%.
it's like,
And you know what every software team will tell you? No, 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 no. Don't worry about printing it. Just use the link. Just open the link.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Open the link.
it's like,
Just share a link.
it's,
And
I think he's got the office bugged.
yeah,
and
you must have heard us.
You're listening to the Offsite podcast with Jason and Carlos, where we talk all things construction and technology.
Join us for discussions with industry leaders and insights into the latest trends in construction.
Welcome back to the pod. So again, another episode. I'm joined by Mike as a guest host. Mike, how you doing?
Very well, thank you, mate. Pleasure to come back again.
Filling in, got the call up again to fill in for Carlos, who's on week 4 now of new dad duty.
The bench is still skinny for the podcast co-host role, mate, so I'm back.
Are you hoping he extends the leave to the 5th week, or?
No, I reckon he could come back. I've kept the seats warm, and I think he's ready to go when he's back.
Cool, awesome. I'm pretty pumped to talk to our guest today. So I guess for setting the scene, the goal of why we started this podcast was to bring together ideas from the folks who were trying to deliver projects and the technology providers that were delivering the most value. And a lot of those conversations we're having on a daily basis. And I'm a big believer in the idea that the thing and the tool and the software that delivers the most value is the one that gets used. So I have internally this test that I use, which is what software do I see on people's bookmark bar on their browser whenever we're talking to customers or watching recordings of setups or demos. And it's hard for me to find a more commonly used platform than Propeller. So I'm super pumped to be joined by Rory San Miguel. Rory is the founder and CEO of Propeller. Mate, thank you very much for taking the time.
yeah, it's a pleasure. Very excited to be here. And I couldn't agree more with your intro there, that the bookmarks bar is a really telling piece. We see, I'm most proud when it's email, calendar, Propeller, and then whatever else is going on. So yeah, I do take note of that too.
If you're ahead of the BOM, the Bureau of Meteorology, you're doing well. That's the bar to get ahead of. Although I did see a guy's bookmark on a recording the other day where in this little menu, he had several bookmark folders, and in each folder, he had probably 50 to 100 bookmarks. So I don't know if
That's definitely not me. I'm not that guy.
That's wild.
That being said, I think the bookmark we come up against the most is probably the fantasy football tab or bookmark that exists at a lot of our customer sites. So yeah, if we're ahead or behind fantasy football, that's the question.
Okay, righto. Yeah. At the risk, mate, I've been super impressed at understanding some of, and I won't claim to understand the full extent of, some of technically what your hardware, software, etc. does. And I know lots of people listening in Australia will know exactly what Propeller does. But at the risk of asking you to repeat a spiel that you've probably repeated 6,500 times, for some of the audience that will be based in the UK or other places, it would be awesome to understand what your product does. I could try and explain it, but once I hit the word photogrammetry, I'm everyone will know I'm well beyond my skis. So to ask you to explain, what Propeller does.
Fantastic. So we make some hardware and we make some software. The hardware we make are GPS-based products. We focus on high accuracy GPS or RTK or PPK for anyone that's in the world of survey. So we build, for example, our most popular hardware product are the arrow points. The arrow points are these visible targets, checkerboard style targets, 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters. And they are used to georeference drone data to make that drone data really accurate. And then our software works really closely with that, of course. And what we do really as a business is we're a cloud drone data processing and analytics solution. We sell you the software and the hardware that you need to go out and do your own drone surveys. Our hardware makes that really accurate and easy to do. Our software does the processing of that data. So we're essentially stitching lots of individual photos, thousands of photos together into one big seamless 3D map. Again, because of that hardware, our 3D maps are generally 3 centimeters accurate vertically. So right down there with sort of GPS grade accuracy that you get from a rover. And then we have a web platform. Think of it as Google Maps on steroids for your construction site. You can fly as often as you want. Those maps get updated. You can kind of scrub back through time. Off the back of that elevation data we're getting, one of the common use cases, very common, is quantifying material on a work site, whether that's stockpiles that are coming in or how much material you've moved with your earth moving fleet. So that's really what our customers do, is they move a lot of material. They're using Propeller to survey their site. They're using Propeller to quantify how much that site is changing over time. And then more and more as we go, and what we're hearing from our customers is Propeller's being used to collaborate, to discuss, to plan. You walk through a site office and you might see a few screens up and a few people crowded around, and they're just kind of using it as a way to dial in the conversation that they're having and bring context to people so that, they're all talking on the map. And I think sort of philosophically, what we believe is that the map and mapping data in general is really intuitive. There's no language barrier. It works really well on mobile devices. I think Google Maps has done a great job of putting maps in our pocket. Propeller's the extension of that for work sites. And because of how familiar we all are with maps and spatial things in general, I mean, we exist spatially, right? Everything we look around, it's how far away is that thing, and that we have this innate spatial understanding. And I think this Propeller's the digital version of that. Where we see it going is that this drone map happens to be a really convenient, accurate, high quality way of surveying the site, but it also becomes an interesting place to centralize a lot of your data and your workflows, where instead of being organized in folders or on desktops or with times, like you're actually just pinning things directly to the map where they exist. Because again, in construction, everything has a time, everything has a place. And I think, our data is essentially capturing the site in that same paradigm. And that's what has become so good about, I think, the product, and driven a lot of the uptake and a lot of that tab action that you see in people's bookmarks.
One of the things that we do on almost every demo or setup for a customer from the HVAC side is ask them, like, what are they building, talk about the product. And then everyone's intuitive action is get a map up in Propeller or Google Maps and go, we're doing this from here to here. And then 100%.
Exactly. We're moving offices at the moment. This is a side note, but we're moving offices and we're trying to sublet our current office, which I'm currently in. And someone called me earlier to say, like, hey, I saw your post and I'm curious about the office. Can you sort of explain it to me? And I was trying to explain the layout of our office using words, which is insane. And Propeller exists in maps. We are a mapping company. We are mapping nerds. We are GPS nerds here. And I'm just going, I'd love if there was just a map. Why am I having this discussion? I'm saying the northeast corner and the south. Instead, I can just pull up a map and see it all and talk someone through it as if we're in the space. So it is really that step shift, going from PDF drawings with contour lines that are understandable if you are technically trained, but are not understandable if you're just in the field, right? And Propeller is 3D. It's actually 3D. It's not contour lines. It's actually 3D. It's in the browser. It's available on your phone. And that's exactly to your point. That's what makes it really valuable.
If you could get to even describing that you're the northeast corner, you're definitely like 7 steps ahead of me. You could put me in any room and put a gun to my head and said which way is north, and I'll be 9 times out of 10 wrong.
I felt bad for this guy that I was talking to, because I was like, does he know which way north is? And I do, because we live in this world, right? But when I was like, God, is this a flex that I'm saying like north and south and east?
Yeah, it's like when people use phonetic alphabet and stuff. Like I'm just like, okay, you know where north is. I don't.
Yeah, and I didn't, that's that gap between GPS nerds, GIS people, survey people like us, and then people that are in the field. That gap exists in construction, and I think Propeller stumbled into that, honestly. But it's giving everyone that shared language and shared understanding that has driven the business for sure.
Yeah. So I guess you and I, when we spoke the other day, I sort of made up this invented paradigm of like, or maybe you had mentioned it or someone else, this idea of like front of house and back of house software that like for construction teams, there are certain processes like paying people, like commercial forecasting, maybe like safety documentation and reporting that you might class as back of house that support functions and other teams will you do on some sort of cycle. And then that there's certain tools that front of house teams, like the actual people needing to build the thing every day, go out and make sure stuff happen, solve problems, fight fires. There's certain tools that they need and use. And that there's like a lot of software in that back of house space. There's like a big graveyard of stuff in the front of house place because the bar is like so much higher to be successful in that front of house software. The people are way busier. The room for error and the patience and the ability to like play around and deal with bad tools is wildly different. The thing that I've observed is in construction software, there is so much stuff that just isn't at the level that front of house team needs. And Propeller, in my view, from watching teams use it, is doing a tremendous job over a long period of time. So I guess the question that I'm leading to is what in your view does it take to make a tool that those front of house on the ground delivery team folks will spend their time in and I guess then ultimately advocate for and use?
Before I answer what it takes to build that, I think I'll answer what it is first for those people that are front of house, to use your language. You know, the projects that we work with all have 3D designs that are being built by those back of house teams, right? So they're taking the drawings from the client, the kind of scope, they're building out those 3D designs, those surfaces, they're sort of putting in line work to show where curbs and gutters are going to be. These are all conceptual designs. And there is a massive gulf between a conceptual design and the real world. And really, how do you kind of close that gap? Those designs are all really created in really advanced CAD packages, Trimble Business Center, Autodesk products, etc. But then what do you do to show someone, to get their feedback? And we hear about things all the time where, for example, the designer sitting in a nice office puts the design together, and then what happens is they put it in Propeller. And in Propeller, that design is visualized in 3D. It's in the right coordinate system. It shows up exactly where it should be. There's also a drone survey there. And straight away, someone will see that there's a heritage listed tree that's right in the middle of the design. And they won't be able to see that from the office. They won't be able to figure that out from the office, but someone looking at it in the field that knows the practical constraints of the site can say, we can't touch that tree. Then there's a lap, right, where that feedback goes back to the designer with a screenshot, generally a report from Propeller, and says, make some adjustments, and they'll go away and adjust and come back. And so that process needs those two parties, the office and the field, to be collaborating. But then how do you move the 3D file? Like, there's no sharing, collaboration tools built onto those design platforms, right? So Propeller becomes that interface, I think, between the office and the field. Then it becomes that interface between reality and the design. It's the bit in the middle, which is the messy bit, which is the hard bit, as far as we hear from customers. So that's, I think, an example where, it's all well and good to have the design. It's all well and good to produce, nice isometric drawings of that design to make it really intuitively understandable to someone that understands the constraints of the site, the practicalities of the build. That's one of the examples, right? Another example is foremen and superintendents that are reporting their quantities on a daily or weekly basis. Previously have to rely on survey teams to do that. Now the survey teams vet Propeller. Is it accurate enough? Are the quantities as I would produce? How hard is it? Is it easy to get it wrong? If we kind of pass all those hurdles from the survey team says to the foreman superintendent, you can do this yourself now. And then at the end of the week or the day, they get a drone survey done. Often they're flying it, the drone themselves. The data comes back pretty quickly these days, within a few hours generally. They sit there and they draw the polygons, produce the cuts and the fills, and now they've become sort of self-sufficient, right, in a progress tracking capacity. And then the survey team is freed up to do more complex work, and they're not a bottleneck across half a dozen sites that are asking them, hey, where are we at on this? What's the latest elevation here? all that grade checking, all of those kind of spot checks are happening. It's a closed loop in the field. They're able to do this and solve their questions themselves. So that's really what I think when you say, front of house, back of house, or in the field, in the office, like for us, that's what makes Propeller and in the field tool. We have so much planned to enhance this. Like we've got a mobile app, you can see it all in 3D, you can see your designs, you got that blue dot that runs around the map where you are. So you've got all that context, but we want to enhance the mobile app significantly, letting you do a lot of those measurement reports, etc.
For the guys on the ground that are in that like delivery role, like tangible benefits that solve something that they used to do manually is probably part of it.
And this was going to be the how. So how is, I think, ultimately we've had to listen and ask our customers and listen to them really carefully and closely. What are the problems that you've got that we can help solve? Everyone says you have to do this. As far as like not many companies actually seem to do it. We do it. We do it a lot here at Propeller. So we've iterated and sort of, tried to seek out those problems that we can solve. And then I think you need to be really skeptical of yourself when you're building these products. You need to assume you're not going to crack these people in the field. You need to go to great lengths to disprove that you won't be able to crack them. You really need to try and, I think technology companies come in with like a slightly like an air of arrogance around we're really good at this. It's fancy software. Like it's awesome. We're going to save you lots of money. At the end of the day, I think we need to turn that right down, turn up the humility significantly. These are busy people. They have been building things far longer than we've been building software. We can't assume there's massive gains to be had. It's these incremental small things, real problems that you need to solve to get them to spend their precious time with your tool, and ultimately needs to be valuable, be more rewarding than it is effort. And that's just taken us 10 years. So Propeller's coming up to 10 years old. It's just been a slow and incremental journey to becoming more relevant. And again, this is just the beginning for us. We think there's so much more we can do for people in the field.
You're right. Everyone says you got to listen to customers and users, and and I've been as guilty as any to like having an amount of hubris that like, okay, there's a better way to do it or whatever. Within that though, I'm sure you get the classic, there's like that paradigm where the person you're really trying to help is the busy person that isn't going to spend a bunch of time writing into you with feature requests and ideas. And then there's like this kind of like less relevant persona that it would be nice to help, but they're not the core person that you're trying to solve problems for, but they'll write to you with a million feature requests and suggestions and, bang in on chat. How do you pass, what's the filter and how do you deal with working out what's real and what's not real, what you should do or what you shouldn't do?
For us, the dynamic is there's generally a survey manager or a survey team that we work with to begin with. And we want to work really closely with them. And in fact, we're probably solving their problems more than the people that they serve. We're helping them get their data processed faster, kind of freeing up time from their specific job. They are technical. They vet us. They have high standards of data accuracy and quality. And we want to be fully legit. We want to satisfy their needs entirely. And so that's kind of step one. From there, it's, the hub and the spoke model is how it's referred to internally. They're the hub. And then the spokes are all these sites and teams that rely on them. And those survey managers start to give Propeller to their teams because it's designed for that. And they act as this really amazing ally where we're working with those survey managers. They're sort of collecting feedback. They might be doing a bit of training on the tools, or they might be pinging our team to organize training. So we have now survey people are very busy. It's not that they're not busy. It's that they have a lot to gain by their teams adopting Propeller. And not everyone believes this. Especially a few years ago, we had challenges with the survey crews who thought that Propeller was competitive to their core trade. That's really subsided now, which is fantastic. And by and large, the predominant sentiment is drones don't replace surveyors whatsoever. They're a tool to assist survey teams and potentially to allow some of the end users of the information to self-source, right? But we have that sort of two-party dynamic that gets around the problem that you're talking about. So Now, there's a risk there, and that the way that survey people will translate feedback from foremen and superintendents to us is slightly incorrect, but it's better than nothing. And again, this allyship between Propeller and the survey crews has been really rewarding. I think we trust them massively, and they've looked after us so far. So I think that's how. And yeah, if you can find it, if you're building technology products, you can find that dynamic. I think they ultimately end up being your champions, right? You need that to help these organizations fully.
Awesome. I've got about 700 follow-on questions, but Mike, I'll let you. Why don't you jump in, mate?
I'll get one in before you get started and take the second half, mate. When you were talking about that, particularly the intuitive nature of what you're doing, reflecting back to how spatial we all are, I was really interested to unpack how you balance. Obviously, we're dealing with highly complex data, very different systems and hardware. And when you think about those champion users who are sitting in the survey teams, for instance, very high bar, probably used to reading very large documents with very large onboarding or training programs. And then when you think about the practical users out in the field who are looking to extract value quickly, how do you go with balancing that complexity and simplicity? Because a lot of tools, I feel like, almost like to pack in the complexity and just put that burden back onto the user to then figure out. And what I've observed from you guys is you somehow are able to balance that complexity and technical difficulty whilst making it really intuitive and accessible for users to come and get value out quickly.
I think it's a really good question. I was talking to a customer a few weeks ago, and they were asking us to extend our design visualization capabilities into design creation, which is where it always goes. Now, the good thing is this customer had been a customer for a while. And I was able to say in, I reckon, 2 sentences, hey, you can already do this in your CAD packages. Are you sure you want us to do this and potentially ruin the simplicity of Propeller for all of the people that rely on it that are less technical than you? Are you sure you want us to do that? And they said, actually, no, I get it. I get where the dotted line is around Propeller. And I think we need to be really clear about that. Like, if we take a small step out of that dotted line, all of a sudden we open the floodgates for a ton of feature development along that vector. So for us, we have no issue with CAD programs. We love CAD. Like, people have fantastic CAD tools. What's the point of us trying to replicate it? Not to mention all the challenges of doing it in a browser compared to doing it, on a high performance, desktop environment. So that's just one example where I think, honestly, it's taken a lot of intuition from us, a lot of listening to customers, of course. Now that we have sort of that dotted line pretty clearly carved out, we can easily explain it to customers, and they come back and defend the need for simplicity too. I think that's really important. So actually, the people that previously wanted technical things realize that there's more value for them individually in keeping Propeller simple. Doesn't mean it's not hard. We are in the process of rolling something out that is actually quite complex, and so much energy has gone into trying to make it simple. That phrase, I was going to write you a short letter, but I ran out of time.
Yeah.
It's easier to write a long email than a short email in many situations. So I think that paradox exists with software. It's much harder to build less than to build more. And so it's just a constant dance. And we have a ways to go, I would say.
Yeah. No, it makes complete sense.
I'm back in, remember, Mike. That was exactly the thing that I had in my mind with the questions I was asking as well, that like you could, given you interface with a lot of those design packages, there is the tendency for feature requests to come that pull incremental complexity from those packages in, which is kind of what we see from like scheduling. So we see incremental requests for P6 like functionality, and you constantly have to defend and understand where the dotted line is to not magically bloat. Like exactly as you said, once you start walking in that direction or along that vector, you don't know where you stop.
Yeah, and it's hard to stop. It's hard to undo the expectations that you set, with your customers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I think the simplicity is not to be underrated. And even our mobile app, like it's pretty basic right now, embarrassingly basic, but at least it's not complex.
Yeah.
And we can add functionality carefully, but we're starting off with a pretty straightforward map viewer on your phone. So yeah, that's our compass on it.
It's a lot easier to add features or complexity than it is to try and add in simplicity later.
Or take it away.
Yeah.
Oh, chaos.
Taking away things is hell. For anyone that has a software company, you might think it's easy to just add things and take things away. That it is torture for you. It's torture for your customers. It's one of the worst things.
Rory, you're not originally from like a construction or mining background, I don't think. And so either your product kind of found this market or this market kind of found your product to a degree. As a result of that, do you get a lot of folks from construction come ask you advice about starting companies, starting software companies, entrepreneurship in like a construction or mining space?
I get my fair share of that. My approach to this has been to generally be as open and transparent as possible, which is to say, I am a robot nerd. I'm not a earthworks nerd. And so what that means is our customers need to teach us about earth moving, and we can help them with robots and software. I don't pretend to know everything, and I think that's where part of the culture that we have internally comes from, around not carrying that software company arrogance and being really humble about what we're good at and what we're not good at, and knowing what our customers are good at and where they need us to help them. 90% of our product development probably gets driven by actual people that, I went and caught up with a few weeks ago in Tennessee, in the US. So a lot that because I'm an outsider, Propeller needs customers to drive the direction of the business. I can't fall back on my experience, right? And I think that naivety keeps us fundamentally open-minded. And I think we can solve problems in a unique way because we don't have any of the legacy necessarily. And so those arrow points, for example, I mean, it's a pretty simple idea. You take a ground control point, which has been around, I don't know, since 50 years, whenever the first aerial photographs were taken, I'm sure. So you've got a ground control point, normal thing. You got a GPS, normal thing, GPS rover. No one had really put them together until we turned up, and it's a patented product, and we've sold more than 30,000 of them now around the world. So I think you need an outsider's approach in a way, in some cases, right? So someone needs to describe the problem, and then outsiders can think creatively about the solution, and that's how we work with our customers all the time.
I was going to ask you what advice you give to those folks, but I think what you've just described is probably the perfect advice, because something that I probably observe a lot with founders that are from construction, and I'm constantly reevaluating myself on this paradigm as well, is like people come to it with, the knowledge that they have and applying that to solving the problem as they see it.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of software in construction where it's like how Bob does, site diaries, for example. And the product is just 100% what their spreadsheet was or whatever they used to do. And like I said before, I've been a victim of that hubris many times. So I think that advice of open-mindedness is probably like the top of the list.
Yeah, and look, sometimes we get it wrong too. I don't know if you have this. If any of our customers are listening, we've had this feature request for a few years, many years. I'm not going to own up to how many years, but let's say a few years. Just
one day after founding.
To add subfolders to measurements. We've gone through the cycles of like trying to reinvent folders, and I think every software company does. And then then you have to realize like folders are fine. Folders aren't the issue. And like, let's not spend our creative energy reinventing folders. Let's just give the people what they want, which is folders and subfolders. And don't get too smart about it. So I think we go through these cycles, and I'm not sure, do you have any of these feature requests that you like?
I've got so many, man.
You've like over-engineered, you've shot past, and they're just like, why don't you just give me folders? Like, what's your equivalent of this?
We went through this whole journey of one of the tricky things that we struggled with at the start is what most people do when they're planning, if they're using something like Microsoft Project, is this interaction of building nesting through like indentation, the way you would in like Markdown. And that fundamentally falls apart in a multiplayer environment where people are looking at subsets of the data and it's all a live environment because people start indenting other people's work and putting other people's work accidentally in folders. And in order to get away from that, we were going to make like more explicit folders. But because for some stupid reason in my own mind, we didn't want to make folders, we started with a thing that we called groups. And they would only have one level of nesting, not multiple levels of nesting. And then the feature requests started coming multiple levels of nesting.
And then you add
because
another
we'd
level of
stacked
nesting. And then the very next feature request is, can I have another level of nesting? And you know how this goes. You just have to let customers organize their data as they want to do it.
We stupidly stacked so much functionality on top of that one level of nesting that it made it almost impossible for us to get to the second level of nesting without breaking a lot of, like, we had like, if you're in this thing, it auto assigns you to certain things. So there's like conditional rules based on the nesting. And so we've been on a long journey for many years of like winding our way back to November last year, we shipped folders.
Rory could have saved you like 3 years of heartache, mate. You should have said, what
No,
you thought on
Hey,
folders?
we're still going through this ourselves. Like, that's, you know, as much as I can spit out the advice pretty easily, but here we are suffering through it as well.
Because some of our customers will be listening, we won't go into any more of those because there's a long list of them.
Jason, on behalf of your customers, build folders.
We're done. Folders are done. Folders are done.
Here's top tips on, like, don't reinvent the wheel. Folders, people love. PDFs, people love. And emails, people love. All three are valid, legit ways to export and use your platform. Don't try and reinvent it. Like, that's just the basics.
Well, yeah, that probably touches you. Your top two touches on the two biggest ones. For us is like, whenever we ship functionality, we spend ages refining exactly how it will work in a multiplayer, you know, in mobile, in web app. And then the first request when we ship it, if we haven't done it already, is, can I print this?
Yeah.
And it's like
100%.
It's like,
and you know what every software team will tell you? No. Don't worry about printing it. Just use the link. Just open the link.
Yeah. Oh,
open the link.
It's like,
just share a link. And
I think he's got the office bugged.
Yeah, you must have heard us.
It's like, just the link's fine, right? And the customer's like, listen, PDF, print. That's what I want.
We have a little game which happens internally. Sometimes we ship the functionality to just throw it into beta, and then we'll ship like the printing and the stuff after. And we have a little game of like how long it will take before the first feature request comes from, can I print this? And I think it was like October last year or something, we shipped a board view of the plan. And it was about like 45 seconds to a minute before this is great. Can I print this?
Yeah, we spent like 6 months last year overhauling all of our printing and reporting capabilities. So now you can put anything on the map and you can open up a large format printout and just like move the screen around and export as a PDF in a different size thing. It's the simple things, guys.
Yeah.
You know, and that's back to the point around how do we balance simplicity and complexity. You let people bloody print PDFs. That's how you do it, you know?
Yeah.
PDFs, you know, piece of paper doesn't run out of batteries. You don't have to change the brightness of the screen. You're not getting called and text messages from your family while you know, like, there's lots of advantages in some situations to that analog stuff. So I think slot in, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Like, be creative where you need to be creative, but don't be creative everywhere. That's a waste of energy.
100%. You do sound like you've spent years as a construction superintendent.
Really? I'm like the salty old dude in our product team. I'm like, guys, build folders. Like, they're like, no, we've got this better idea. I'm like, you never have a better idea than folders. No one's ever had a better idea than folders. So just build folders.
I'm conscious of time, so I wanted to get on to one more topic before we run out. The other week there was we had a guest on the podcast a couple of weeks ago that then we were talking about plant equipment. And I know there's a lot of overlap between what you do and earth moving plant equipment. And this idea of mixed fleets, tracking of fleets, the data from fleets, the analytics, and that then led to a LinkedIn discussion around how's that going to evolve? Are OEMs going to keep upping the game of analytics and availability of data through APIs so that maybe there's a software layer that can sit on top, or do the software technology companies and hardware companies need to build, hardware that attaches and whatever to the machine? I'd be interested to know if you have a take on that, because you're much closer to it than I am.
Yes, I'm trying to find our thing. Oh, no, there's one. So we do have a take on this. Let me show you what it is.
At least you know it wasn't
start.
prepared earlier then, if it's a good find.
All right. So we talked about what Propeller does: mapping, drones, etc., tracking progress. Our customers have gone from flying monthly, fortnightly, weekly, twice a weekly, like in some cases every day. So the frequency is increasing, gets up to a point where it stops kind of getting practical, and you've got to do too much work to analyze the data to get value from it incrementally. So, there are like natural ceilings on how frequently you'd want to capture. Of course, these sites are moving in many cases 24 hours a day. They've got a lot of material to move. And so we went on the journey of like what kind of augments the drone? How do we solve this problem in other ways or in other contexts? Given our hardware capabilities as a team, as a company, the GPS proficiency that we have, the survey sort of DNA in the business, branched out to a degree, and we've built our own machine tracking solution. Machine tracking solutions, there's a million of them. Telematics, I'm sure many people hopefully listening have telematics to some degree on their machines already. What's different about our telematics is that when you put our device on the machine, you essentially measure up down to the ground. How high is the device off the ground? And then we're using RTK, or very accurate GPS, right? As that machine's moving, we're subtracting the height of the device down to the ground. And then as the machine's moving across the ground, we're actually picking up the elevation under that machine. Now, if you do that across all the machines, especially all the machines that are cutting or filling, like doing the material movement, you end up being able to build a live terrain model, live topography on the worksite. So this product and this software suite bolts into regular Propeller, where you've got this big drone survey coming in every week, say, and that resets all the elevations. It's super accurate. And then you got these guys called dirt mates that are magnetic solar powered devices. You slap it on the top of the machine, it streams all of its data back to our servers, and then we stitch all of that into the drone map and make a big 3D model that's updated every 30 minutes. Now, that's what makes it different to traditional telematics, right? Because normal telematics has low accuracy GPS, it's just a dot on a map. We're actually getting elevations, but it also does the generic telematics things. So for example, even though it's not wired into the machine, once you put this on a machine, if you turn the machine on, we start to feel the vibration at the RPM of the engine. And so we can tell when a machine is on, off, idle, moving, working, etc., through vibration. We count up all of the cycles that are happening automatically. So if you've got scraper fleets running around, we calculate how many cycles those scrapers have done. Today they're using the clickers, which is error prone. As you can imagine, people just maybe press a couple extra times. We also calculate the length of the cycles, the average speeds. There's an element of who's moving the most material. Not just scrapers, of course, but any machine that's cutting or filling. We're able to derive those operational metrics around cycles, loads, dumps, counts, distances, lengths, idle, etc. And we're able to derive the surface that's resultant of that work. And that all adds together to get you essentially a daily report at the end of the day. And we're trying to get to sort of daily progress and productivity tracking that's fairly hands-off. You get a daily report that says this is how much cut and this is how much fill. These are all the cycles. This is the idle time, aggregated idle time, 15 hours of total idle, like huge amount of, all sorts of things that come on this report. And it's giving our customers that real-time sense. So for us, the reason we've gone with a hardware, to answer your question initially, a hardware and software solution here rather than just software, is because none of the existing telematics solutions do survey data. You can get survey data off the machine control solutions, but you're in for 50 grand each per machine to get machine control. So there's going to be many machines where it doesn't make sense to put machine control on. You're never going to get that data from them. And the software backbone of all the machine control systems is not where you need it to be in 2024. It's kind of, they're not cloud, they're not streaming. It's like, it's a different architecture from a sort of, 10 or 15 years ago, really. Now, our customers are all mixed fleet. Everyone is mixed fleet. I don't know anyone that's not mixed fleet.
No one's so not. Yeah.
It's a myth, right? Now, what I find weird is that companies spin up, have, bespoke solutions like these, then they get bought by one of the big OEMs, Cat, Komatsu, that then becomes proprietary, walled garden, to try and add competitive advantage or defensibility, differentiation on the machines themselves. And we don't think this is a viable approach. We think there needs to be that common layer, and it needs to be hot swappable, easy to move and change, because the fleets are always changing the composition, and importantly, it needs to be low cost. So our stuff's like $1,000 or $2,000.
Answer to my question for sure then is 100%. Yeah. Okay. Software, hardware on the machines, not the OEM. So that's you and Tommy from Fleets versus me.
The OEMs simply aren't incentivized to share their data.
Yeah, but wouldn't they be incentivized to sell like the kind of like Tesla FSD? Aren't they incentivized to sell a reasonable upgrade package of it and bundle in with that proper streaming of event data?
Yeah, but they can do that, but it streams into like cattelematics.com. It doesn't stream to a general like it. So they do that. They upsell telematics, but then you have a portal for the Cat stuff, a portal for the Komatsu stuff, a portal for John Deere, etc. But like, where's the incentive to close that OEM brand gap? Now, I should say there are ISO standards coming down the pipe for some of this machine data, so it's going to get more open. Even then, it's not survey data. So for us, we think, and survey data is its own beast. Machine manufacturers and not survey people. Survey is a pain in the ass in some ways, because you've got coordinate systems and you've got base stations and RTK and reference stations. There's a lot of like weird, decimal point complexity around survey data and accuracy and quality assurance and all sorts of stuff. So it's hard. It's easy to imagine telematics becoming kind of cross-platform. It's a lot harder to imagine survey data becoming cross-platform and really handled by the OEMs.
I'm conscious of time, so mate, I think we'll
I need to run. There.
And I guess in a wrap, mate, I guess I'm a big believer of the value of geospatial data. Come on, get your
cheeky plug. There is a new version coming down the pipe with 4G for anyone that has experienced these based on Wi-Fi. It's going to get a lot better.
Cool. Awesome. Mate, like I was saying, I'm a big believer in the value of geospatial data and it being the simplest way for construction teams to understand and communicate and collaborate. And so many teams pay for certain geospatial solutions that we won't name that they don't use. And I think that Propeller, from what I've observed, is the total opposite.
I know what you're talking about there, and I agree. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the time. And
thanks for the time, mate.
What you guys are doing too.